Draco Malfoy and the Truth of the Heart. By Draco will hear about this. Chapter 3. The Will of Albus Dumbledore. When Draco arrived at the Burrow the next day, the mood was more than just a little tense. He found Weasley in the kitchen peeling potatoes in silence as his mother forcefully chopped carrots, and Draco took a moment to watch them before timidly clearing his throat. They both looked up from their tasks then, and Miss Weasley's usually kind face softened just a fraction at the sight of him, while Weasley's expression seemed to scream, "Run while you still can!"
"Draco, dear," Miss Weasley said, "how sweet of you to drop by. I'm afraid we're all swamped with wedding preparations, so we don't really have time."
"I don't want to intrude," Draco assured her. "I'd just like to see Harry. I'm sure you can understand. We've been apart for weeks, and last night was a little hectic." Miss Weasley frowned, her lips tight as if her worst fears had been confirmed, and Draco added quietly, "I can help with whatever chores you gave him. 2 pairs of hands are faster than 1, and I'm off age, so I can use magic too. We can get more done together." Her frown deepened, indicating that he'd said exactly what she was afraid of, but she had no argument to refute his.
"Fine," she returned rather stiffly. "Harry's with the chickens, cleaning out the shed. But come back inside as soon as you're finished. I have a whole list of tasks for you. No dawdling."
Draco nodded and quickly turned to the living room to flee to the garden, eager to get out of her sight. "Malfoy," Weasley called, making Draco halt in his movements. "Gonna have a word."
"Ronald Weasley," his mother hissed immediately. "Lunch will cook itself and—"
"Blimey, Mum! It will only take a moment!"
Weasley snapped his ears red.
"I'll be back in a minute, I swear!" And before his mother could respond, he had caught up with Draco and bodily pushed him out of the kitchen and into the living room. The room was deserted, which was unusual, but apparently convenient, as Weasley huffed out a breath of relief and leaned closer to speak softly to Draco. "Listen, you need to know something. Harry was going to sneak off last night. I called him before he could leave the premises and I could talk him into staying, but he was dead set on making a run for it."
"What?" Draco, his eyes wide as he stared at Weasley, heart hammering.
"Yeah," Weasley nodded rather grimly. "When I got to him, he tried to talk me into going with them, but I told him he was mental. You and mine, he would track us down anyway, and you'd make us regret it, if we survived that long without you, that is."
"You bet we would!"
Draco muttered a little shakily. "I think not knowing whether you were dead or alive last night really did a number on him." Weasley mused, catching his eye. "So you better talk to him, alright? He usually listens to you more than to us."
"Usually being the key word here,"
Draco sighed, biting his lip.
"I'll try my best."
"Do that," Weasley nodded. "Know you're on a tight schedule though. Mum is trying her best to keep us from having private conversations, it seems."
As if on cue, his mother's angry voice demanded Weasley's presence in the kitchen.
"Slay,"
he sighed, rolling his eyes.
"I'll try to be quick and efficient," Draco muttered, nodding at Weasley in thanks before making the way over to the garden. Harry had left the door to the shed open, and Draco stood in the entrance door a moment to watch him muck out one of the perches for the hens, a permanent frown on his face. Draco sighed, entering and clearing his throat, making Harry look up. "Hey!" he smiled tentatively, and Harry tried to return it, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I had to basically fight Miss Weasley to get in here. She seems to think we might cook up something evil in her shed. Must be my Slytherin influence." The joke fell flat between them, and Draco sighed, crossing the remaining distance between them to sling his arms around Harry's waist, digging his chin into his shoulder. It effectively stopped Harry from moving around. "I'm sorry about last night," Draco muttered. "I know I scared you. I didn't mean to." "I know you didn't," Harry sighed. "You never do. That's the problem. You just instinctively try to throw yourself into harm's way sometimes, and it scares me." "I always thought my survival instincts were much further developed than those of you Gryffindors," Draco pointed out, voice mild. "No, not when it comes to protecting me, they aren't," Harry argued, voice heavy. "You've run headfirst into danger one too many times for my liking lately, and I just—" He didn't finish the sentence, and Draco squeezed his arms around him and turned his face to press a kiss to the side of his neck. "I'm sorry," Draco breathed. "I'll be more careful." "I can't lose you, Draco," Harry whispered. "What a lucky coincidence," Draco said lightly. "I can't lose you either, so let's just stay together and make sure no one dies, okay?" Harry shook his head, sighing deeply. "I still think you're more likely to get hurt with me than you are without me," he muttered. "Well, I strongly disagree," Draco said softly. "Also, no offense, but you don't get to make decisions for me just because we're together. I made my choice to stick by you, and my own mother knows better than to try to change my mind, so you'd better stop putting up a fight too." "So she's just going to let you go?" Harry asked, sounding doubtful. "Just like that?" "Yes," Draco nodded. "Just like that. But doesn't she realize—" "She knows exactly how dangerous it is, Harry. She's a highly intelligent woman, but she's also watched her son turn his back on his parents' ideology from an age of 11, all because he met you. She knows better than to fight it." Harry was silent for a long moment, and then he squirmed in Draco's embrace, causing Draco to loosen his arms just a little to allow Harry to turn to face him. Harry's green eyes were blazing with desperation as he cupped Draco's cheeks, gently tracing his jaw. "I'm terrified of being the cause of your death one day," Harry breathed. "I'm not sure if I could live with that." Draco turned his face to kiss his palm, lingering before he spoke. "The thing is, Harry, that me surviving without you is not an option. The emotional aspect aside, you are the one who's supposed to defeat the Dark Lord. And if you're killed and I'm still alive, they'll eventually find me and finish me off too. So logic dictates that my life is better spent trying to keep you alive than hiding somewhere and waiting things out, living in regret should they not work out the way I'd hoped." Harry's face was pained when he'd finished, but he had nothing to return to this logic, so it seemed infallible. Draco leaned in to nudge his nose. "I know it's hard for you," Draco whispered, "but please stop focusing so much on how we could die, and let's start concentrating on how to survive. I think our energy is much better spent that way." Harry breathed out a deep sigh, but finally he nodded. His hands moved to Draco's hair, running loving fingers through it as he connected their lips in a bone-melting kiss. This was how Miss Weasley found them eventually, fuming at their lack of progress. "I'm sorry," Draco muttered, flushing as Harry stumbled back, returning to his work.
I think it's better if you return home for today, Draco,"
Miss Weasley said coolly.
"I think you've done enough."
And that was the first and only time Draco was thrown out of the burrow. After that horrifying incident, Draco decided to lay low for the remaining 4 days until Bill and Fleur's wedding. He went over only once before the big event, and that was for Harry's birthday, when he was explicitly invited for dinner. Harry had insisted on not wanting Miss Weasley to make a big fuss on his birthday, so they merely invited most of the Weasley clan, Hagrid, Dora, Remus, and Draco, and had a small celebration at the Burrow. Draco allowed himself to flew over after breakfast, figuring that on this special occasion, he might actually be allowed into Harry's proximity sooner than everyone else. And fair enough, Miss Weasley narrowed her eyes for a moment as she caught sight of him, but she waved him through to Weasley's room. Draco found Harry in a rare quiet moment with Hermione and Weasley, and his eyes lightened up when Draco entered the room, which Draco took as a stark improvement compared to his dark mood last time they'd spoken. "Mom let you wait, didn't she?" Weasley snickered, and Draco threw him an unimpressed glare as he took a seat next to Harry on his mattress and kissed his cheek. "I thought you might ban you after doing untoward things in our shed." "We didn't do untoward things," Harry exclaimed. "Best friend, it was a kiss. And anyway, you know she was just paranoid we've been planning our escape from the burrow behind her back."
"Don't let him wake you up, Harry," Hermione rolled her eyes, smiling. "You're just giving him ammunition."
Harry grumbled to himself but quickly fell silent. Draco shook his head, deciding not to comment. Instead, he pulled a little box from his robe pocket and handed it to Harry. "Happy birthday," he smiled. "Thanks." Harry smiled softly. "Can I open it?" "No, it's just for decoration." Draco dipped in, making Harry roll his eyes and reach out to remove the lid. "You know, if you're planning to propose, that's not the most romantic way to do it," Weasley commented. "You're not kneeling, for one." "It's not even the right size for a ring box," Draco snorted. "Find smarter taunts, Weasley." Weasley opened his mouth to retort, but Hermione elbowed him, eyes on Harry, who had opened the box and was staring at its content. Draco leaned into him and took the box from him, removing the elegant leather bracelet inside and unlacing it, reaching out for Harry's wrist. "I hope you like it," Draco said quietly. "It's not merely supposed to be pretty, though. It's enchanted to allow the wearer to communicate with its twin, which I own." He indicated to the band around his own wrist before he finished tying Harry's and turned to point at the clasp. See the golden anchor you clasp it with? There's a tiny wheel at the base. Turn it until it glows, and then mine should grow warm, indicating you're trying to contact me. If you hold it to your mouth, it should transfer your voice, and vice versa, of course. If you're done, just turn the wheel in the other direction, and it will stop glowing. I thought it might be practical in case we get separated. He finished, a little unsure now. It's less flashy than a Patronus. See? You did this? Harry asked, sounding stunned. Well, yeah, Draco shrugged. It wasn't that difficult, really. Just a little twist on the charms Hermione created the coins and the parchments with, and... You are amazing. Harry smiled, shaking his head and leaning in to press a kiss to Draco's lips. I love them. I'm sure they'll come in super handy.
Definitely, Hermione agreed, eyes glowing. Can I see?
They spent the next couple of minutes trying out the bracelets, and Draco found a little pride in the absolute delight in Hermione's eyes. They were called downstairs once the others started to arrive. The Delacours had arrived at the Burrow 2 days prior, and Fleur's little sister Gabrielle seemed to have taken a particular liking towards Draco's boyfriend. Draco remembered there was a story there, though he intended to suppress memories of the second task of the Triwizard Tournament. But he had not expected her to put her Vila heritage to full use by flirting with Harry. Draco would have been annoyed if the unnerved expression on Harry's face hadn't been so utterly adorable. Save me, Harry whispered to him, leaning into his side after one of Gabrielle's less subtle attempts at gaining his favor. Draco couldn't help but laugh at him, though he did claim his stake by brushing the hair from his forehead and pressing a chaste kiss to his lips, which Harry shamelessly leaned into. Gabrielle gave Draco the cold shoulder for the rest of her stay at the Burrow after that. Eventually, when they were all gathered, only Mr. Weasley was missing, and Miss Weasley was about to start dinner without him when his Patronus arrived with a message. Minister for Magic is coming with me, the Silver Weasel announced with Arthur Weasley's voice, making everyone fall silent in alarm. We shouldn't be here, Remus said immediately, getting to his feet, Dora on his heels. Hurry! I'm sorry, I'll explain another time. They clambered out of sight, disapparating immediately, and Draco felt livid as he stared after them. He knew that the reason they felt the need to take off like that was Scrimgeour's anti-werewolf stance. He knew why he disliked the man. Miss Weasley, meanwhile, seemed completely out of her depths. The minister? But why? She muttered. I don't understand. Draco thought it was pretty obvious that whatever the minister wanted, it was to be related to Harry, and his fingers clenched into a fist at the thought. Harry noticed and closed his own fingers around Draco's wrist. Only a moment later, Mr. Weasley apparated at the gate, Scrimgeour close behind him. They watched silently as the two of them made their way over to them, Mr. Weasley looking nervous and the minister's face grim. Sorry to intrude, Scrimgeour said, especially as I can see that I am gate-crashing a party. Draco didn't think he looked very sorry, though, and his following congratulations to Harry were more than half-baked. I require a private word with you, Scrimgeour went on, to absolutely no one's surprise. What did shock him, though, was that he added, also with Mr. Ronald Weasley, Mr. Hermione Granger, and Mr. Draco Malfoy. Us? Weasley asked, the first to speak. Why? I shall tell you that when we are somewhere private. Scrimgeour shrugged him off rather coolly. Is there such a place? He asked, turning to Mr. Weasley again. Yes, of course. Mr. Weasley nodded, though he looked worried. The, sitting room, why don't you use that? You can lead the way, Scrimgeour said to Weasley. There will be no need for you to accompany us, Arthur. Draco thought that Mr. Weasley quite disagreed with that sentiment, but he knew that arguing with the minister wasn't in his best interest, so he stayed quiet. The four of them got to their feet and followed Weasley into the living room. None of them spoke as they took their seats, Scrimgeour in an armchair while the other four squeezed onto the sofa, Draco sitting on the armrest, basically in Harry's lap. But they exchanged meaningful looks which spoke volumes. I have some questions for the four of you, and I think it will be best if we do it individually. If you three, he indicated to the right half of the sofa, excluding Weasley, can wait upstairs. I will start with Ronald. We're not going anywhere. Harry shot him down, and Hermione was nodding vigorously. You can speak to us together, or not at all. You can't play us against each other, you know, Draco drawled, rolling his eyes. You didn't really think it would be that easy. Scrimgeour threw him a nasty look, but he seemed to try his best to keep a cool head in the face of their hostility. Interesting, Draco thought. Whatever information he required, he wanted it badly. "Very well then. Together!" he shrugged. "I am here, as I'm sure you know, because of Albus Dumbledore's will."
Draco blinked, flabbergasted. Then he glanced at the others, who seemed just as taken aback. Harry caught his eyes' clear surprise in his expression.
"A surprise, apparently. You were not aware, then, that Dumbledore had left you anything?" All of us?" Weasley asked. "Not just Harry?" "Yes, all of—"
"Dumbledore died over a month ago,"
Harry interrupted him, voice hard.
"Why has it taken this long to give us what he left us?"
"Isn't it obvious?" Hermione answered before Scrimgeour could. "They wanted to examine whatever he'd left us. You had no right to do that." She called her anger now directed at the minister.
"I get every right," the minister shrugged her off. "The decree for justifiable confiscation gives the ministry the power to confiscate the contents of a will."
"Yes, but only in case the ministry has evidence that said contents might be illegal or dangerous," Draco cut in, his eyes blazing. "I know that law very well. It was put in action often enough against pure-blood families. Somehow, though, I doubt that Albus Dumbledore would leave his 4 students any dangerous or illegal dark artifacts."
"Well, considering your family background, Mr. Malfoy, do you really blame the ministry for being overly careful with any artifact handed to you?"
Scrimgeour asked pointedly, and Draco glowered at him. "Excuse me?"
Harry asked, his voice rising.
"Are you insinuating what I think you are insinuating?"
"Harry," Draco warned, his voice strained. "No, he's right. This is ridiculous," Hermione snapped. "You have no legal base for this, and now you're trying to justify your actions with Draco's family background."
"Who are you to tell me what's legal and what isn't, Miss Scrimgeour?" Scrimgeour asked. "Are you planning to follow a career in medical law?"
"No, I'm not," she snapped. "I'm hoping to do some good in the world."
And at that moment, Draco felt so vastly proud of her, he wished he could reach across the sofa to hug her. Weasley laughed, but Scrimgeour's eyes flashed in anger. Harry was still positively vibrating with rage next to Draco. The minister really shouldn't have made the mistake of doubting Draco's allegiance, he thought absent-mindedly.
"So why have you decided to let us have our things now?"
Harry snarled at last.
"Can't think of a pretext to keep them?"
"They're only allowed to keep them for 31 days, Harry," Draco snorted. "Their time is up." "Would you say you were close to Dumbledore, Ronald?" Scrimgeour asked, completely ignoring the two of them.
"Dumbledore was a very caring headmaster," Draco spoke before Weasley could. "He took a great interest in a lot of students, and especially in those surrounding Harry. You surely know that Harry has had a rough past, so he did his best to support him all he could, and in the process, he became quite invested in his life and the lives of the people closest to him."
It was a shameless stretch of the truth, of course, but Draco could see what the minister was up to at last.
He wanted to find reasons to take away whatever heirlooms Dumbledore had given them, and he was not going to let that happen.
He was unsure whether Weasley and the others had already caught up, but surely after Draco's little speech, they would. "I wasn't speaking to you, Mr. Malfoy," Scrimgeour sniped.
"So sorry, Minister."
Draco smiled, but he did glance at Weasley for a moment. The other's eyes were wide, but when they met Draco's, he sat up straight and nodded once. Thank Merlin, Draco thought. "Of course, I wasn't as close to Dumbledore as Harry," Weasley said finally. "But as Malfoy said, Dumbledore did, take an interest in all of us, because we were Harry's friends. I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? Harry was alone all these years, and he wanted him to have a better life and all that."
"We saw a lot of him in Hogwarts, and I think he grew very fond of us all,"
Hermione said, and she even went as far as putting forth a bit of acting, making her voice sound nostalgic, saddened.
"At least I enjoyed our conversations very much whenever they happened."
Scrimgeour glared into the round. Very clearly he didn't believe a word they said, but he knew he was outmaneuvered. So he pulled a drawstring pouch from inside his cloak, and without ado presented them with a scroll of parchment from which he read, "The last will and testament of Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. Yes, here we are. To Ronald Bellius Weasley, I leave my Deluminator in the hope that he will remember me when he uses it."
Draco frowned, watching as Scrimgeour withdrew an object that looked almost muggle in its construction. It was long and silver, with a cap at the top and a button at the bottom.
Weasley turned it over and over in his hands as the minister handed it to him. "That is a valuable object," Scrimgeour said. "It may even be unique. Certainly it is of Dumbledore's own design. Why would he have left you an item so rare?"
That was a very good question, Draco thought.
One he had no immediate answer to, but even if he had, Scrimgeour wouldn't get it. Weasley must have thought along the same lines, because he just shrugged and muttered, "It wanted me to have something to put out lights with, I suppose." What else can I do with it?
It was obvious Scrimgeour, even after excessive examination of the item, had no answer to that question, and it
Frustrated him immensely.
so he returned to Dumbledore's will and began reading again.
To Miss Hermione Jane Granger, I leave my copy of The Tales of the Beetle the Bard, in the hope that she will find them entertaining and instructive.
Draco had to school his face very carefully to not make his eyebrows shoot up as Scrimgeour pulled the book from the sack.
A book of fairy tales, even a first edition.
Sure, Hermione was a book nerd, but why leave this to her? There must be some sort of clue hidden there. They would probably have to talk later. As Hermione took the book, a tear slipped from her eyes, and if she was indeed still acting, she was doing a bloody good job of it.
Why do you think Dumbledore left you that book, Miss Granger?
Scrimgeour asked. He knew I liked books, she answered, her voice thick.
But why that particular book?
Scrimgeour prodded. Honestly, Draco injected, exasperated. There could be a million answers. Hermione is Muggle-born, so he might have wanted her to own a bit of wizarding culture. She is a talented rune translator, so he might have wanted to give her a challenge. They discussed books a lot. Maybe he was fond of that volume and wanted to know it was in good hands. If you don't want us to go back in time and ask the headmaster, which will be extremely difficult without time-termers, I'd say we'll never know. Scrimgeour pointedly ignored him, still focused on Hermione.
Did you ever discuss codes, or any means of passing secret messages with Dumbledore?
Oh, for Merlin's sake! Draco growled.
Yo, be quiet!
Scrimgeour called, finally goaded by Draco's behavior.
Don't talk to Draco like that.
Harry is immediately alert.
No, I didn't.
Hermione said loudly, speaking over everyone and cutting their banter short. She was still teary-eyed, and Weasley squirmed to put an arm around her.
And if the Ministry hasn't found any hidden codes in this book in 31 days, I doubt I will.
Scrimgeour was breathing heavily now. He threw another nasty glare at Draco before huffing and returning to the will, reading,
To Draco Lucius Malfoy I leave the necklace, the truth of the heart. It was originally an heirloom stemming from the Black family that fell into my possession, and I feel it's only just to return it to someone originating from that bloodline now. I'll leave it to Malfoy in the hope that in moments of despair it will present him with comfort and hope.
Draco blinked, staring, when Scrimgeour drew a long, ancient black and gold jewelry box out of the sack and thrust it at him. Draco took it carefully, lifting the lid to reveal a necklace carefully spread out on golden padding. The necklace itself was silver and of a quite simple, sturdy chain, holding a round stone the likes Draco had never seen before. It looked a little like an amber at first glance, but it was lighter and more translucent, and it sparkled, as if actual gold particles were embedded into the stone.
Have you ever seen that particular heirloom before, Mr. Malfoy?
Scrimgeour asked him, making Draco look up at last. No, he answered, truthfully this time. I haven't.
Do you have any idea why Dumbledore had it?
Not in the slightest. That wasn't quite as true. He might have found it at Grimmauld Place, though there was no guarantee for that, of course.
Do you know what it does?
Scrimgeour continued, eyes narrowing. How would I, since I obviously didn't know it existed until a minute ago? Draco rolled his eyes. Why don't you tell me, since you've obviously run all sorts of tests on it?
Its magic allows you to catch short glimpses of people you hold dear.
Scrimgeour explains, his voice short, and Draco's heart sped up a little, thinking that this was an unexpectedly useful gift.
Why would they think you'd need such an item, Mr. Malfoy?
Who says he thought I'd need it? Draco countered. It belonged to my family. He wanted to return it. Simple as that. Scrimgeour glared, but he apparently had nothing else to add. Instead, he turned to the will once more.
To Harry James Potter,
he read, and Draco felt very tense in anticipation next to him.
I leave the snitch he caught in his first Quidditch match at Hogwarts as a remainder of the rewards of perseverance and skill.
Draco couldn't help but stare dumbly this time as Scrimgeour withdrew the tiny golden ball, its wings beating feebly in his hand. Whatever he had expected, it was a gnat.
Why did Dumbledore leave you this snitch?
Scrimgeour asked, not unwarranted.
No idea.
Harry shrugged, sounding disappointed. For the reasons you just read out, I suppose. To remind me what you can get if you persevere, or whatever it was.
You think there's a mere symbolic keepsake, then?
I suppose so. What else could it be? And that's when it hit Draco. Snitches had flesh memories. They remembered the first person to touch them. In this case, Harry.
There might be something hidden within that snitch that would only be revealed once Harry touched it. He sat still, wondering if there was any way to communicate this to Harry without it being obvious. He missed whatever banter was happening around him as his mind worked, only perking up when he heard the words "flesh memories," this time from Hermione's mouth. He threw her an incredulous glance, but she did not see him. How the heck was it a good idea to present the answer to Scrimgeour on a silver platter? But as Scrimgeour laid out everything Draco had realized a minute before for them in excruciating detail, Draco quickly came to see that Scrimgeour had planned for this all along, and that every attempt to stall or prevent the inevitable would be fruitless. Harry still hesitated before taking the snitch from Scrimgeour's hand, but when he finally did, Draco bit his lip, waiting. Nothing happened. He was both relieved and disappointed all at once. That was dramatic, Harry noted dryly. Draco snorted, and Hermione and Weasley laughed.
That's all then, is it?
Hermione said.
Not quite, Scrimgeour drawled, his expression sour. Dumbledore left you a second bequest. Potter?
What is it?
Harry asked. The sword of Godric Gryffindor.
Draco's eyes widened, and Harry turned his head left and right to look for the sword, as if it might just appear in the room upon call.
So where is it? He demanded. Unfortunately,
Scrimgeour said, and Draco thought he detected some pleasure in his voice now.
That sword was not Dumbledore's to give away. The sword of Godric Gryffindor is an important historical artifact, and as such belongs...
It belongs to Harry,
Hermione argued angrily.
It chose him. He was the one who found it. It came to him out of the Sorting Hat.
According to reliable historical sources, the sword may present itself to any worthy Gryffindor,
Scrimgeour recited.
That does not make it the exclusive property of Mr. Potter, whatever Dumbledore may have decided.
He was staring at Harry again, continuing,
Why do you think...
Oh, in the name of Salazar!
Draco exploded.
I've got enough of your questions, Minister. You've taken up quite enough of our time, considering that all you've done is insult us and withhold our property. Now, if you don't mind, we'd like to enjoy whatever's left of Harry's birthday.
Shut your mouth, Scrimgeour called. This isn't a joke. Why did Dumbledore want you to have that sword, Potter? Was it because Dumbledore believed only the sword of Godric Gryffindor could defeat the heir of Slytherin? Did he wish to give you that sword, Potter, because he believed, as so many, that you were the one destined to destroy who must not be named?
Interesting theory, Harry snapped. Has anyone ever tried sticking a sword in Voldemort? Maybe the Ministry should put some people onto that instead of wasting their time stripping down Deluminators and covering up breakouts from Azkaban. So is this what you've been doing, Minister? Shut up in your office trying to break open a snitch? People are dying! And Draco was very nearly one of them only a couple of days ago.
You mean at the Order's autonomous attempt to move you from Privet Drive?
Scrimgeour yelled, standing now, and Harry too jumped to his feet. Draco hastily got to his feet as well, one in hand.
If they had relied upon the Ministry instead of doing everything on their own and involving students barely of age...
Why would we cooperate with you? Harry shouted. You lie, you keep secrets, you call the people I'd give my life for untrustworthy. Why would I ever believe a word you say?
You'll go too far!
Scrimgeour shouted, brandishing his wand, but Draco was ready. He'd thrown a shield charm over Harry, throwing the minister back a couple of feet.
Don't you dare!
Draco seethed, wand pointed.
Don't you dare raise your wand against Harry, because, Minister, I swear you will walk out of here on your feet if you do! Is that a threat?
He yelled.
Yes!
Draco said. The door opened, and Mr. and Mrs. Weasley burst into the room, eyes wide. We thought we heard... Mr. Weasley muttered, looking from Scrimgeour to Draco, who both still had their wands raised.
Raise voices!
Miss Weasley finished her expression, terrified at the picture in front of her. Finally, Draco composed himself and lowered his wand. Scrimgeour followed his example, though more dirkily than him.
That was nothing, he muttered. I regret your attitude, he said stiffly, glancing at Harry once more. You seem to think that the Ministry does not desire what Dumbledore desired. We ought to be working together.
I don't like your methods, Minister, Harry glowered. Remember. And at that, Harry raised his right fist, showing off the scars he had obtained under Umbridge's punishment. Scrimgeour tensed, and without another word, he retreated, leaving the room. Miss Weasley followed. Nobody moved until she called, "He's gone." They spent the rest of the birthday dinner retelling the story of Scrimgeour's visit and showing off their heirlooms. Seeing as the start of the celebrations had been terribly delayed, and the wedding would take place the next day, though, it was all very rushed, and before he knew it, Draco was swiped off into the fireplace without having exchanged a private word with the other three about the events of the day. He did make good use of his birthday present for Harry, though. With only a short hello to his mother, Andromeda, and Ted, he disappeared into his room and contacted Harry via the bracelets. It turned out that Harry wasn't alone.
Hermione is up with us in Ron's room,
Harry informed him. Great, that means we can brainstorm! Draco nodded, holding the bracelet to his mouth as he spoke. So any ideas on hidden meanings for your heirlooms yet?
Well, I realized something, Harry said slowly. Do you still remember how I caught my first snitch?
Draco frowned, trying to dig up that particular memory. I remember you almost falling to your death because Quirrell hexed your broom, Draco offered a little lamely.
I almost swallowed that snitch,
Harry huffed, apparently affronted that Draco had wiped that detail from his memory. All right, Draco rolled his eyes. I was a little distracted worrying about you and all, blimey!
Anyway, when I held the snitch to my mouth, writing appeared.
What did it say?
I open at the close.
Draco frowned. How ominous, he muttered.
Yeah.
Harry sighed. How about the Deluminator or the book? Any hidden qualities yet?
Nothing,
Harry said.
Not that we saw, at least. How about your necklace?
Draco frowned, picking the box up from where he had deposited it on the mattress and removing the lid once more, observing it. I haven't tried it out yet, he admitted. I'm not sure how it works.
Well, you might want to start by wearing it,
Harry suggested helpfully, and Draco rolled his eyes. He picked the necklace up to pull it over his head, holding the glittering stone in his palm. It felt warm to the touch. I'm wearing it, he told Harry, holding the bracelet to his mouth again.
Okay,
Harry said.
Scrimgeour said it would give you what? Short glimpses of people you hold dear?
Yes, Draco nodded, frowning. I'll try holding the stone and think of you, okay? Let's see what happens. Maybe it's about intent.
Give it a go.
Harry agreed. Draco closed his eyes and concentrated, his fist closing around the stone. Show me Harry, he thought, and suddenly a picture flashed into his mind of Harry in Weasley's room, lounging on his mattress as Weasley laid stretched out on his bed, clicking the Deluminator and switching the light on and off. Hermione was leaning with her back against the side of Weasley's, her feet under Harry's blanket, and the tails of Beetle the Bard in her lap as she stared expectantly at the bracelet around Harry's wrist. The snitch flapped around the room. Draco tore his eyes open, his heart hammering in his chest. I saw you, he breathed.
You did?
Harry asked, sounding excited. Yes, Draco muttered, biting down on a grin. You need new pajamas, love. Once this war is over, I'll gift you some proper ones, some that didn't used to belong to Dudley.
Prat,
Harry chuckled, voice fond.
That's practical, though.
Practical, sure, Draco nodded, though I'm not sure how exactly it will help us win a war.
Me neither,
Harry sighed.
If Dumbledore had a plan with any of this, he sure missed the opportunity to reveal it to me.
We'll figure it out, Draco promised. We always do, eventually. There was a moment of silence before Harry said,
Hermione thinks we should all go to bed. The wedding.
Right, Draco nodded. Sleep well then. I'll see you tomorrow.
See you. Good night.
Harry returned, and a moment later the bracelet stopped glowing, indicating Harry had cut the connection. Draco sighed, glancing at the stone in his palm once more before closing his eyes and thinking of Harry. One more glance wouldn't hurt, he figured, just before he went to sleep. After all, he had to try out his new heirloom.